Hello everyone, Erica here from Bravo Migration. Happy to have you here today. It's been a while since our last live transmission. I'm here in our beautiful office in Sydney, and I'm here today to give everyone good news. We are finally seeing the states and territories reopening for skilled visa nominations. So some states gradually started publishing their criteria and their skilled occupation lists, and we're here to do a summary of everything. Now, we're getting a lot of questions from people asking why the program was closed. And the reason is the financial year in Australia starts on the 1st of July, and the change in government that happens this May delayed everything. The states and territories need to be allocated places and a program so they can nominate people for the subclass 190 permanent visa and subclass 491 the regional provisional, which means temporary visa. While the states and territories weren't allocated places, they couldn't nominate people. They were waiting for the federal government. Normally that's done before the financial year starts, but as I said, because of the change in government, we had elections in May. This has been delayed. Now, in August, we're seeing states and territories gradually reopening. So I was going to start this live transmission today by telling you that New South Wales, Queensland, and South Australia were still closed, but Queensland also reopened yesterday. So one more to the list of states and territories that are open for nominations. Now, we knew with this new government that skilled migration was going to get a boost as they understand there's a huge shortage in skills in Australia across the board, across all industries. We need workers in aged care, in childcare centers. We also need workers in hospitality. We need workers in IT, in engineering. We need scientists. We need doctors and nurses. With COVID, the skill shortages increased. Australia has always been a country that relies on migrant work to fill those shortages. We have a super strong economy, but we are a small country with around 26 million people, so we always need migrants. The previous government understood that, and there were places allocated, but the important thing to know today is that the new government understands that even more and is increasing numbers. So the states and territories were allocated what is called interim numbers, meaning they got a portion of their places. They're going to get more. And because of that, we saw states and territories increasing, making more flexible, really, what they require from migrants. Than last financial year, for example. Sorry, there's a dog here today with me and she's unhappy. So apologies, it's the Bravo Bulldog and she's not happy. What we have to tell you today is that be careful. There are more places coming. The requirements are more flexible. The occupation lists have been expanded in general, across the board with all states, a few not so much. But what we're seeing as well is a trend in states and territories operating under an invitation-only system, meaning that, yes, everything looks great. States like Victoria, for example, that were very restrictive, have increased their occupation list to all occupations in the list. But you got to be careful. All these states and territories have introduced a invitation-only system. And that means that you need to submit your expression of interest. You need to wait until you are selected and invited by the state. It's not as simple as it appears. Sorry, guys. She's not happy at all. So Victoria, starting with Victoria, as I said, they used to be restricted to only people who are living and working in health occupations in Victoria. They have now opened for all occupations in the list without the need of being working in an occupation there. However, they still require you to be invited first. Same with Queensland. New South Wales is going to open soon, and they're gonna follow with this system, which was the system they had last year. We're still waiting for South Australia to publish their requirements. Last year they had part of the list of occupations had to wait for an invitation. Other parts could apply directly. We're probably gonna see the same with South Australia. We saw Western Australia also expand their list, and they're open for nominations. Victoria is open for nominations. Queensland opened yesterday, as I mentioned. We are waiting for South Australia and New South Wales to open. The Northern Territory is a territory where you don't need invitations yet. They may change this, and they have less numbers than everyone else, so I don't expect to see a huge influx of migrants there because they have a small population and therefore smaller numbers. We also have Canberra always nominating every month. They used to have several invitation rounds last year, so we are hoping they're going to have the same happening this financial year. And Tasmania has also maintained their graduate program, which is something they're really keen on, nominating people who studied there. And the instrument, which is the list of all occupations, is open for them. But sadly, we saw them also change to a system where they only accept applications when they pre-select that candidate. So again, an invitation-only system. All around, great news. We saw, especially Victoria, expanding their list is great news because, as I said, they were very restrictive for the past 2 financial years. Queensland remains open for the whole instrument, and we see with all states and territories a preference for people who are already living and working in those states and territories, as well as students, international students who are graduating from those areas. But on a even more positive trend, we're seeing the majority of states and territories open for expressions of interest from people who are not in Australia, which with COVID, we saw that really gone. And then when it came back last year, it was minimal. But even before COVID, because there weren't that many places being allocated by the Liberal government, we saw nominations for people who are not in Australia reduce a lot. And we're now seeing the states and territories open to consider candidates from outside of Australia because they are being allocated more places. So naturally, they have more places. They are going to be able to nominate more people. But if you look at what is also becoming a trend, we're seeing states and territories determine a priority list. So, for example, Western Australia and Tasmania are doing that. They are open for expressions of interest from candidates who are not in Australia, but they prioritize people who are living in Western Australia or in Tasmania. So using Tasmania as an example, they're going to prioritize people who are living and working there, living and studying there, and then they will look at people who are expressing interest to be nominated from outside of Australia. Same thing with WA, Western Australia. They have a priority list determined, but you need to remember with WA, and this hasn't changed from last year, you need to have a job offer in your occupation in Western Australia to be able to be considered. So if you're in Australia and you don't have a job offer in WA, then unfortunately, this is not an option for you. This is not a state for you. Other states as Tasmania and Queensland, they don't require a job offer, but they require other things. Either you graduate there or you must be working there. Now, Queensland has pathways for people who are graduating from higher education, so bachelor, master, or PhD, or for people who are working full-time in Queensland. And then there's also now, finally, Queensland open for people who are not in Australia. So we're very happy to see that. New South Wales will remain with their invitation-only system, but they will consider applications, expressions of interest from people who are not in Australia. I will be presenting a webinar next week with the New South Wales government. Unfortunately, that's not for the general public, it's for other migration agents. I present legal training for other agents and solicitors, and we teamed with the New South Wales government, and we're going to speak about what their requirements are. But on the week of the 29th or the first week of September, I don't remember exactly, there is a webinar. I think it's next week. Is that next? Yes, next week. So next week, I will be presenting for the general public with one of our Bravo Migration webinars and talking about all the requirements from all states and territories in detail, discussing occupation lists and so on. So have a look at our link in the bio here on Instagram, or get in touch with us and sign up. It's a free webinar, and we're going to spend 1 hour together really dissecting all the requirements and occupation lists. Now, what is important today is I'm seeing lots of movements online, in social media, saying the floodgates are open, etc., etc. It's great news. Things are looking really positive for skilled migrants in Australia. The states and territories have expanded occupation lists and made their requirements more flexible, but you need to understand you can't directly apply. So we're already receiving emails from people saying, I want to apply for nomination with Victoria, I want to apply for nomination with Queensland. We need to first submit an expression of interest, and you need to be selected. So how many people they will select, what this process will be, how long it will take, we're only going to see this in the coming months. So it could be a good strategy, a good visa strategy for you, but it's not something we can just go and apply for a visa for you tomorrow. So get in touch with us, get assessed. It's the most important thing you could do is find out if you qualify for the nomination from the state that you would like to settle in. We can check that for you. You can find your real chances and then get things organized and go through the steps, which are getting a skills assessment in your chosen occupation, submitting an expression of interest, waiting to be selected by the state in question. Different processes apply. Some states take longer than others, and you may not be selected, so you need to have a plan B. We can create that plan B for you. And once you're invited, then you can apply for the visa, and we hope to be able to help you with that. So, as I said, I'll be presenting with the government next week, but that's only for agents. And the week after, we will be presenting for you via one of our free Bravo Migration lunchtime webinars. So get ready, and hopefully we'll have a great year for skilled migration coming up. Thank you, and see you later.